A pirate walks into a bar and sits down. The bartender notices that he's got a peg leg, a hook for a hand, and a patch over one eye. The pirate orders the beer, and while he's pouring it, the bartender says, "So what's the story with the leg?" "Well, it was many years ago," says the pirate. "I was walking the deck of my ship, and a rogue wave swept me overboard, and a shark swam up and bit my leg clean off. I swam ashore, and I was fitted for a peg leg that very night." "That's terrible," said the bartender. "What about the hand?" "Well, it was the very next day," said the pirate. "I was walking on the deck, and all of a sudden a rogue wave swept me overboard again. A whale came up and bit my hand clean off. I swam ashore as best I could, and I was fitted for a hook that very night." "Wow," said the bartender. "What about the eye?" "Well, it was actually the very next day. I was walking on the deck of my ship, and we were looking out for rogue waves, and a seagull flew overhead and crapped right in my eye." "Oh, man," said the bartender. "And that blinded you?" "Well, no," said the pirate, "but it was my first day with the hook." A man was scuba diving with his wife, and unfortunately, she was lost at sea. Well, the next day, a couple of officers knocked on the door and said, "Sorry to call on you like this, sir, but we do have some information on your wife." "Well, tell me," the guy said. The officer says, "Well, we've got some bad news, some really good news, and some really great news. What do you want to hear first?" "Well, fearing the worst," the guy says, "go ahead, give me the bad news first." So the officer says, "Sorry to tell you this, sir, but this morning we found your wife in the bay." "Oh my God," he said. But then he remembered that the officer says, "Wait, what's the good news?" "Well," the officer said, "when we pulled her up, she had 2 5-pound lobsters and a dozen good-sized crabs on her." "If that's the good news, then what's the great news?" the guy said. "Well, we're going to pull her up again tomorrow." A guy decides to take off early from work and go out and have a couple. Well, he stays until the tavern closes, at which time he's pretty well had his fill. When he enters his house, he didn't want to wake anybody up, so he takes off his shoes and starts tiptoeing up the stairs. Well, halfway up the stairs, he falls over backwards and lands flat on his back. Wouldn't have been so bad, except he had a couple of empty pint bottles in his back pockets. They broke and, of course, carved up his backside pretty terribly. A few minutes later, as he was getting ready for bed, he noticed the injury and tried to fix it up as best he could. Then he had off to sleep. Well, the next morning his head was hurting, his rear was hurting, and he was still under the covers trying to come up with a good story for his wife. "Well, you really tied one on last night," she said as she walked in the room. "Oh, I worked late," he said. "I might have stopped off for a couple of beers." "Ha! A couple of beers," she says. "You got plastered." "Wait, what makes you think I got so plastered last night?" he said. "Well, my first big clue, when I got up this morning and I found all the band-aids stuck to the mirror."